What if the world's most advanced fighter jet could be turned off like a TV from the other side of the globe? Like in a spy thriller, one moment Europe's warplanes are soaring through the skies, and the next they're electronically neutralized by a secret code from Washington. This unsettling idea of an American kill switch in the F-35 has been making rounds in defense ministries and prompting some very real questions about control and sovereignty. The rumor itself is, of course, unproven and unlikely, yet it persists because the anxiety behind it is painfully real. No country wants to find out in the middle of a crisis that its fighter jets are effectively on loan rather than fully its own. And while America may not have a real-time switch to turn off the jets, it doesn't need one. It controls something just as good: the logistics. Much of modern warfare is about control, but control extends as much to supply chains and software code as it does to munitions and aircraft. For clarity, it's not that anyone expects the US to suddenly turn hostile, but the dependence itself is seen as a risk. Rumors, after all, need no proof, only timing and an anxious audience. It doesn't help that Trump continues to send mixed signals on NATO's Mutual Defense Pact. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio is now doing damage control and trying to reassure allies, but without much success. Some European media outlets are now dubbing it NATO's deepest crisis. Others, however, see this as a timely reminder never to let a good crisis go to waste. France has taken steps to increase the Rafale's manufacturing output, while Macron has called on European nations to replace American-made military weapons like the F-35 with French-made alternatives. These are precisely the type of nuanced developments that become the match lighting the fuse, and it's going virtually unnoticed. Of the 74 media outlets reporting on this story, the majority are from France, while only one is from the United States. To stay on top of things, I use Ground News. Its tools allow me to compare local and regional sources and form my own opinion. I can't stress enough how important this is, which is why I asked Ground News to sponsor this video. I recommend checking out the blind spot page. You can do so by clicking the QR code on screen or visiting the link in the description. They share lots of interesting stories that other news outlets often miss due to biased reporting. Go to ground.news/Caspian or scan the QR code on the screen to learn more. Subscribing through this link gets you 40% off the Vantage plan. Also, by subscribing, you're directly supporting my channel. Thank you, Ground News. The link is below. Europe's assumption of American permanence is being re-evaluated, and at the center of it all sits the F-35. However, the reasons for this crisis have little to do with the aircraft's performance and everything to do with its political framing. Trump has challenged long-standing diplomatic norms, made military aid conditional, and questioned NATO's Article 5. And while he has valid arguments of his own, the friction has now set in motion an irreversible political shift. Declining trust in Washington has Europe questioning the wisdom of tying its security so tightly to US technology. And that lack of trust is now shaping procurement behavior. The Europeans are openly rethinking the unthinkable, ditching the F-35. In March 2025, Portugal fired an opening salvo. Its defense minister dropped plans to acquire the F-35, saying that Washington could not be relied upon as an ally. Just days later, Canada, once a firm US ally and F-35 development partner, made waves of its own. Canadian officials announced that they were reconsidering their options and negotiating with rival jet manufacturers from Europe. For context, Canada has a contract for 88 F-35s worth about $14 billion. The fact that they're having second thoughts shows that even signed deals aren't sacred when political winds change. Meanwhile, Denmark is regretting its own F-35 order. One of the Danish decision makers for the procurement stated on Twitter that American aircraft were a security risk and that Europe should avoid them if at all possible. But the dominoes kept falling. In Germany, political and Airbus lobbyists are urging the federal government to reconsider its planned F-35 purchase. Germany had agreed to buy 35 F-35s to replace its aging Tornado jets, a deal worth billions. At the same time in France, lawmakers have seized the moment to pitch their own fighter jet, the Rafale, as an alternative. Dassault, after all, has no kill switch of any kind. All across Europe, similar whispers are abound. Policymakers are asking the same question. Do we really want to be in a position where a phone call from Washington could ground our Air Force? Now, no one truly believes the US will suddenly turn against its allies, but the fact that transatlantic unity is now being questioned is a risk in itself. The F-35 program is not just about aircraft, it is about software pipelines, encrypted logistics systems, and spare parts supplied through a network controlled primarily by US entities. In effect, purchasing an F-35 means entering into a long-term strategic dependency. That same principle applies to all other American-made weapons. About 2/3 of European defense procurements in recent years have gone to US suppliers. That's a massive financial and strategic reliance on an ally that might, under some future government, use it as leverage. Little wonder then that Europe is eyeing ways to stand more firmly on its own 2 feet. From joint European fighter programs in the works to simply buying European-made jets like Sweden's Gripen or France's Rafale instead of the F-35. The kill switch theory, while unproven, thrives in this climate of mistrust. It reflects a shift in European thinking, a growing recognition that in modern warfare, digital and logistical control can be just as decisive as firepower. And so, the Europeans are hedging their bets. From a technical standpoint, the F-35 is one of the most complex military platforms in history. It's not merely an aircraft, it's a flying mainframe. Each jet runs millions of lines of code, receives daily encrypted updates, and relies on operating systems for diagnostics, logistics, and analytical maintenance. The most critical functions go through the mission data files, and control over this digital infrastructure remains exclusively in American hands. Even when exported, the aircraft's mission data files are updated and managed via secure US channels. This infrastructure was designed with a centralized network in mind to streamline interoperability among allies. There's no known code that would allow a one-click shutdown of the engine or flight controls from afar. If such a feature existed and ever came to light, it would trigger outrage and effectively kill the export market for all American weapons. For that reason alone, it's hard to imagine the Pentagon intentionally building in such a backdoor. The risk would far outweigh any theoretical leverage. That said, the absence of a real-time switch does not imply the absence of control. If the aircraft's mission data files were disrupted, intentionally or otherwise, the operational readiness of European air forces would drop. For instance, without updated mission data files, the F-35 wouldn't know what emitters to expect and how to respond to them. Its sensors would have difficulty in identifying enemy aircraft and missile threats, and its stealth flight paths wouldn't be optimized to avoid enemy radar detection. The aircraft's combat effectiveness would degrade in all aspects without timely updates to those files. To be clear, the F-35 would still be able to fly and shoot, but it would be stripped of many of its 5th-generation capabilities. So, without America's blessing, Europe's F-35s wouldn't be able to operate with real-time intelligence and threat recognition data. And given the aircraft's high price tag, most air forces would rather have the jets sit in hangars than risk losing them in a highly active combat zone. point in case an outright kill switch is unnecessary. The Pentagon doesn't need one. Any interruption to the aircraft's mission data files would ground the F-35, not instantly, but inevitably. In the span of weeks or months, Europe's air power would collapse. No epic confrontation needed. And this is where Washington's true leverage lies, not in a Hollywood-style kill switch, but more like a slow, boring, logistical kill switch. So, while F-35 operators don't need to worry about a secret self-destruct signal being sent to their aircraft, they do have to accept that owning an F-35 means the US retains a degree of veto power over the jet's operability. In fact, it says so in the aircraft's contract. A report in Stern magazine says it has obtained a copy of the classified German contract for the F-35s. In it, the Pentagon reserves the right to terminate or suspend services if the national interest of the United States requires it. Admittedly, this would need an exceptional and urgent crisis, but its vague language nonetheless leaves too much room for interpretation. It didn't help that around the same time, news broke that Trump had suspended military aid and intelligence to Ukraine, seemingly to push for negotiations with Russia. To Europeans, that signaled a willingness by Washington to use critical support as a bargaining chip, which is precisely their fear with the F-35. If they can do it to Ukraine, maybe they could do it to the rest of NATO someday, the thinking went. The Pentagon has since issued a statement denying the kill switch rumors, but the damage is done. Seen in this way, kill switch is as real as it gets, not as a button, but as a framework. It's embedded not in the aircraft itself, but in its support infrastructure. For Europe, this raises difficult questions. If maintaining sovereignty means reducing technological reliance, then shifting toward European-made alternatives becomes a strategic necessity. However, doing so would require time, investment, and industrial realignment that may not materialize quickly. For now, the F-35s will keep flying with America's blessing, but the aircraft comes with a quiet caveat. Operational freedom is constrained not by electronics, but by software access. And access, as history shows, can be revoked. In the face of this uncertainty, lobbyists from rival aerospace giants such as Airbus and Dassault stand to come out on top as they pitch their own aircraft as European alternatives. America now stands to lose tens of billions, if not more. That's how it goes in geopolitics. Sometimes a well-placed lie can be more lethal than a missile. I've been your host Shirvan from Caspian Report. If you approve of what we do, please leave a comment, hit the like button, and mayhaps share the video. In any case, thank you for your time, and Sawal.